Hey, welcome back, folks. Today's a quick walkthrough for anyone looking to customize the View Resume template and get it live on GitHub Pages. If you've got a basic handle on Git and NPM, you're good to go. Let's dive right in. First things first, let's clone the repo. You'll drop it into a folder called Alana-resume. Nothing fancy, just your classic Git clone move. Next, hop into that folder and run npm install to get everything set up. Make sure you've got Node and npm installed on your machine. If not, go ahead and sort that out before continuing. All right, time to see if everything's working. Start the dev server with npm run dev. It might take a moment the first time since it's compiling all the SCSS, so take a breath, maybe grab a quick sip of coffee. Once it's ready, open your browser and you should see the default resume template. If you do, awesome. That means everything's running smoothly. Now let's clear out the default content. Run npm run resume.clear. This handy little command wipes the slate clean so you can start fresh. Once that's done, spin the dev server back up with npm run dev. Refresh the page, and voila, a blank resume all set for your personal touch. It might take a few seconds to recompile, but then you're good to go. And that's it. Just like that, you've got your View Resume project up and running. Now it's ready for you to make it your own and deploy it when you're ready. All right, so I've got the project open here in PHP Storm, but feel free to use whatever IDE or code editor you're most comfortable with. VS Code, Sublime, WebStorm, totally up to you. The goal here is to walk you through some quick customization steps to personalize the View Resume template, starting with the title and the color palette. And don't worry, it's going to be a breeze. To kick things off, we'll be working with two key files, variables.scss and index.html. These are where most of the visual tweaks live. First, let's open up index.html. This is where we can update the title of the page to reflect the name or identity of the resume. In my case, I'm customizing it for Alana, so I'll go ahead and set that up accordingly. While we're in there, we'll also update the splash screen color. That's the little background you see while the app is loading. I'm switching it to a shade of green to match the overall theme I'm building around Alana. Next up, we'll head over to the variables.sccss file. This is where the magic happens when it comes to colors and visual styling. The idea here is to swap out all the default purple tones with a new set of green shades. So we'll start by updating the primary color. That's basically the main accent color used throughout the resume. Then we'll move on to the default section background, which I'm turning into a very light green so it feels fresh and subtle. The loader background, you guessed it, should also be updated to match that splash screen color we set earlier for consistency. We'll also tweak the text color, going for a really dark green to keep things readable while staying on theme. And the navigation background will shift to a darker green as well, giving it a nice bit of contrast. While we're here, I'm also making a few adjustments to some contrast variables. Things like the avatar border color and the highlighted nav item, just to make sure everything looks sharp and cohesive. Oh, and one more thing, the icon. I'm updating that too. I've got a green computer icon, both in .icho and .svg formats, and I'm just dragging those into the /images icons folder to replace the default ones. It's a small detail, but it really helps bring the whole look together. Once all those changes are in place, go ahead and run npm run dev again. That'll start the dev server and recompile all the SCSS with your updated styles. It might take a few seconds, especially the first time around. But once it's done, you should see everything updated with the new green theme. And just like that, your resume has a fresh new identity. All right, let's dive into some general configurations to really tailor the app to our needs. All the content that powers the app lives inside the data folder, which you'll find in the public directory. That's where we'll focus now, and we're going to walk through the JSON files one by one to tweak them as needed. We'll begin with settings.json. This file contains several global options you can configure. For instance, you can disable the preloading animation or set the navbar to be static by turning off the toggle behavior, helpful if you want a simpler layout. But for now, what we're going to do is add support for two additional languages. Let's start with Italian. We'll add a new entry with the name set to Italiano, an ID of it, and then provide the path to the flag image. Every language you add here needs a corresponding flag icon stored in the public/flags folder. If you open that folder, you'll notice it already contains a bunch of country flags, and if you ever need more, there's a handy download link mentioned in the file's comments. Once we've got Italian set up, we'll do the same for German. So we'll add another entry, name set to Deutsch, ID DA, and point it to the appropriate flag file in the same folder. And that's it for adding new languages. We'll leave English as the default, which means the app will automatically fall back to English translations if it doesn't find something in the selected language. Next up is strings.json. This file holds shared strings that appear in multiple parts of the app, so it's pretty important when it comes to localization. Now that we've added Italian and German, we'll need to add translations for each of these strings in both languages. That way, when users switch languages, everything will feel properly localized and polished. All right, now let's update the user profile. First thing we'll do is change the name to Alana Richard. This is the name that shows up in the sidebar just below the avatar. Then we'll create a new folder inside Public's images called Pictures. And that's where we'll place all the images we want to use in our content. I'm dragging Alana's profile photo into that new folder and then updating the image path in the JSON accordingly. Just a quick note here, the path must be relative to the public folder. Next, we'll update her role to View Developer. And since we're already editing this section, we'll also add translations for her name and role in both German and Italian, just to keep things consistent. If you skip the translations, the app will simply fall back to English for those fields, which is fine, but we want to make the experience feel complete in all languages. And that's it for the setup. Now go ahead and refresh the portfolio in your browser. You should see all the languages listed in the language selector, and if everything went smoothly, the translations should be showing up just as expected. And there we go. Alana's updated profile is now live, and everything's looking great. Next up, let's define the app categories and sections. This is where we start organizing the structure of our resume. Each section in the app belongs to a category, and these categories are especially important when it comes to the mobile view. They help group the sections in a more compact and readable way. So let's begin by creating our categories. Head over to the categories.json file and take a look at the categories array. You'll be able to define as many categories as you want here. Each one needs a few key pieces of information. A unique ID, which is just a string, a ficon, which refers to an icon from the Font Awesome library, and a locales object where you'll define translations for the category name, particularly under the nav label field. Let's go ahead and create 4 categories for now: home, background, showcase, and more. Once we've got our categories set, it's time to create our first section. Let's start with an About section that will act as our cover. Open the sections.json file and add a new entry inside the sections array. Each section you define will need a few fields. First, you'll need a unique ID and the category ID that links this section to one of the categories we just created. Then we have JSON path, which we'll define in a bit. This is where the section will look for its actual content. Next is the ficon, again from the Font Awesome library used in navigation components. The type field tells the app how to lay out the section. This can be centered, row, or column. For the About section, we'll go with centered. You'll also add a locales object that includes the title, a title short, which is a shorter version of that title, an optional description, and finally the nav label, which is the label that will appear in the nav bar for this section. Now let's save and refresh the app. You should see the About section appearing in the nav bar. That means it was successfully created. From here, I'm going to speed things up a bit by copying and pasting the configuration for the remaining sections instead of typing them all out manually. I've added sections for education, skills, experience, portfolio, publications, updates, and contact. Each of these sections is assigned to one of the categories we defined earlier. I've also filled in the translated titles and nav labels for each one to make sure the multilingual setup is consistent. Now, if we go back to the browser and refresh the app, you'll see that all the sections are showing up in the navigation just as expected. And if you check the mobile view, you'll notice that the sections are neatly grouped under their respective categories. Just like we planned, all right, now it's time to populate our very first section with some actual content. Since we're working on the About section, the first thing we need to do is create a JSON file that will hold the content for it. So let's go into the public/data/sections folder and create a new file called about.json. Once that's done, head over to sections.json and make sure the About section references this file correctly. The key here is to provide a path that's relative to where the sections file is. So the JSON path should be set to sections/about.json. Now let's open about.json and start building the content structure. We'll begin by adding an empty articles array. Every section in this app is built from one or more articles. Articles are flexible, reusable components designed to render different kinds of content. There's a list of available article types documented in the original repository if you want to explore more later. For this section, we're going to use one called ArticleProfile. So inside the articles array, let's create an entry for the profile article. It needs a numeric ID, a component field set to article profile, a settings object, and an items array. Each article type has its own specific settings and item structure, and in this tutorial, we'll go through each one step by step. Let's start by adding 2 items to the article profile. These items will each hold an excerpt of the user's bio. Each one should have its own ID and a locales object where you'll provide the translated text. I've already prepared the content for these items, so I'll just go ahead and copy and paste them in. Once everything's in place, save the file, refresh the browser, and you should see the bio text nicely displayed on the About section. Looking good so far. Now let's enhance the section by adding some contact links to the cover page. We'll begin by defining Alana's contact options. To do that, open up profile.json and look for the contact options array. It'll be empty by default. Here you can define as many contact entries as you want. These entries are flexible and can be reused across different components throughout the app. Let's start by creating a contact option for Alana's address. It'll include a label like address, a value such as 123 Sum Street, Chicago, IL 01234, a value condensed, which is a shorter version for compact layouts, a font awesome icon, we'll use Fey Map here, and an optional link in case you want the item to be clickable. That's the basic structure. Once that's in place, I'm going to copy and paste the rest of the contact options, like email, GitHub, Instagram, and so on. With the contact options defined, we can now go back to About.json and wire them up in the article profile settings. Inside the settings object of the article, we'll add 2 properties. First, we'll define contact list IDs and list out address, email, and phone. These will appear right below the title as plain text entries. Then we'll add contact circles IDs and include things like GitHub, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. These will be displayed as circular social icons below the profile description. Let's save everything and refresh the page one more time. And there we go. The About section is now fully set up, complete with a bio and contact links. It's looking great and really starting to feel personal. Let's dive into the article timeline component, and I gotta say, this one's a treat. It's like your go-to tool when you want to build a slick timeline with all the bells and whistles. We're talking dates, icons, descriptions, even cute little pictures if you're feeling fancy. Perfect for stuff like education, work experience, projects, whatever you want to lay out in a chronological flow. So here's what I did. I already whipped up the education.json file, plugged it into the sections.json, so we're all wired up and ready to roll. Now, inside that file, we're going to create our very first timeline article, and it's super chill. Give it an ID, let's say 1 for now. Set the component as ArticleTimeline, and then throw in a settings object and an items array where all the juicy timeline entries are going to live. Now, in settings, we've got two little keys that control the order of the items. Order items by, which is the key used to sort the entries, and order items sort, which tells it if we want things going up or down. We'll keep it super basic and go with ID in descending order. So latest stuff on top makes total sense for something like education, right? Okay, now let's go ahead and create two sample timeline entries, one with ID 1, one with ID 2. Each one's going to have date start and date end, and both are just objects with a year and a month. So let's say the first one starts in January 2020 and wraps up in July 2020. Cool. And for the second one, instead of putting a date end, we're going to do something cooler. We'll pass an object with a string like now in it, and that'll grab the translation string from strings.json. Super handy if you wanted to say something like present or currently. All right, next part, the logo. Each timeline item can either show an image or a font awesome icon. For item 1, we'll use a picture. And yeah, I already dropped it into the pictures folder so we can just point to it, easy peasy. Item 2, let's have some fun and go with a font awesome icon. Maybe the home icon, toss a gray background behind it to make it pop. Cool? Cool? Let's hit refresh, wait for that little loader to finish, and boom, there they are. Super clean. Now comes the flavor part. We fill these items with actual content. So under each entry, we can throw in a title, a description, maybe a little bullet list with topics, tools, highlights, whatever. We can even toss in extra info like province, country, and the name of the institution. And yeah, all of that lives inside the locales object. So you're already set up for translations from the start. And don't stress, none of these fields are required, so you can make it as rich or as minimal as you want. Oh, and shout out to the tags array. That thing's gold. You can add a few quick keywords to describe the entry, and it really helps when you've got a long timeline and want to keep things tidy and searchable. So let's hit refresh again, and ooh, yeah. Now it's all showing up in the timeline. Dates look good, content's in place, logos on point. Chef's kiss. And now confession time. I'm going to go ahead and paste in a whole bunch of sample items I had saved earlier. I mean, hey, why reinvent the wheel? You'll see all kinds of stuff. Entries with tags, entries without, long-form descriptions, quick blurbs, the whole mix, just to get a feel for what a complete timeline looks like when it's fully loaded. So we refresh one last time, and there it is. Full, dynamic, alive. Just how we like it. All right, so today we're diving into this component called ArticleSkills. It's a super handy one designed to render a clean and customizable list of skills, tech stacks, or even just little bits of information you want to highlight. At the moment, we've got 4 items set up. Each item includes a font awesome icon, a title, and a short description. Something neat here is that instead of using an icon, you can actually display an image if you want. But for this walkthrough, we're going to stick with the default icons. And as you can see, the layout already looks pretty structured and polished right out of the box. Now let's take a look at some of the settings you can tweak to make this component truly your own. First up, we've got a setting called max score items per line. And as the name suggests, it controls how many items appear side by side. You can choose between 1, 2, or 3. So let's go ahead and set it to 1, just to see how things look when each item gets its own row. And there you go, everything's stacked vertically now, nice and easy to read. Next up is transparent item icon background. When this is enabled, it removes the background behind each icon, giving everything a more minimal and modern feel. Let's refresh the page, and yep, now the icons are fully transparent, super clean. We also have a setting called small icons, and yep, you guessed it, it simply scales the icons down a bit. Let's toggle that on, refresh the page again, and boom, the icons are now slightly smaller, which is great if you're going for a more subtle layout or just need to save some space. All right, now here's where things start getting a little more dynamic. You can actually add more detailed information to each item. For example, we can add a percentage to represent how proficient we are with a particular skill, and a date start to indicate when we began learning or using it. Let's try that out. I'm going to add a percentage of 90 to one of the items and say we started it in January 2020. We're using a date object here, just like we would with timeline items. Let's refresh, and there it is. Now that item includes both the percentage and the start date. Looks great, but we're not stopping there. You can also customize the look of each item even further. For example, let's give one of them a custom color, something like hash 333, a nice deep gray. Refresh the page, and boom, that item now has its own color. Super slick. While we're at it, let's tweak the percentages across all items to prep for the next feature I want to show you. I'll set the first item to 30, the second to 25, the third to 25s, and the last one to 20. And just to make things a bit more colorful, I'm assigning a different color to each item too, so they each stand out in their own way. Okay, now let's circle back to that image functionality I mentioned earlier. I'm going to swap out the icon on one of the items and replace it with an image. Let's use a British flag for this. The images are stored in the images folder, so I'll just reference it from there. Refreshing again, waiting for the loader, and there it is. That item now shows the flag image instead of an icon, and the custom color still applies. Everything's looking neat and well styled. There's also a small but super useful feature I want to mention. You can add a field called level inside the locales object. It lets you display an extra bit of context like novice, advanced, or fluent right after the title. Perfect for things like language proficiency or skill level. Let's go ahead and add that in real quick. And done. All right, now for the last piece, charts. This component can also render a visual chart, which is a great way to present your data in a more engaging way. As long as each item has a percentage set, you can enable the chart feature by going to the settings and assigning a chart type. Let's use pie here. Once that's done, refresh the page and boom, you've got a pie chart that visually breaks down your skills or data. It's a super handy tool for showing how you spend your time, how your skills are distributed, or just making your portfolio feel a bit more interactive and insightful. And that wraps it up for the ArticleSkills component. It's flexible, visual, and makes it really easy to communicate both high-level and detailed information in a sleek, customizable format. All right, now let's talk about another component. This one's called ArticlePortfolio, and it's designed to help you showcase a collection of projects in a clean and interactive way. So here on the page, we've got a sample portfolio already set up with three categories: apps, games, and websites. Altogether, there are 10 items, and they're distributed across these different categories. It's a great setup if you want to separate your work into types or themes. Let's take a closer look at how this is implemented. At the top of the component config, you'll notice a field called locales, which comes before the settings field. This is where we define the category names. Now, the category all is always included by default. You don't have to add that one yourself. But for custom categories, you'll want to follow a naming pattern like category apps, category games, and so on. That way, everything lines up properly. In terms of settings, this example is using the default ordering. Nothing fancy here. It's simple and it works out of the box. Now onto the real meat of the component, the items. Each item can display either an image or a font awesome icon. In the example setup, we're using images by default, but just to demonstrate how flexible this is, let's change one of the items to use an icon instead. I'm going to give it a font awesome envelope icon, style it in purple, and the icon we'll use is solid fa envelope. Now we head back to the page, and there it is. The new icon is showing up just like we expected. Let's take a closer look at one of these items. Each item includes a category ID, which should match one of the keys you defined earlier in the locales object. It also has a set of translations, a title, a description, and a few tags. These are shown when the user clicks on the item to view more details. Let's click on one of them now to see how that looks. And there we go. The description shows up along with the tags, giving us a quick overview of the project. There's also one more really nice feature worth mentioning, and that's links. Every item can include a set of external links. These are defined in the links object inside each item. Each link includes three things: a font awesome brand icon, a URL, and a string key. This string must be defined in your strings.json file, and it's what will be shown as a tooltip when you hover over the link. These links appear right below the item in the details view, making it super easy to direct users to GitHub repos, live demos, app stores, anything you want to share. And that's basically it. That's how you configure a portfolio using the ArticlePortfolio component. It's simple, it's clean, and it gives you a nice structured way to present your work to the world. All right, so now we're going to dive into two other components that are smaller in scope, but still super useful, especially when you want to add more context or functionality to your page without overwhelming the layout. These are ArticleThread and ArticleContactOptions. Let's start with ArticleThread. Think of this one as a simplified version of a timeline, but with a stronger focus on content rather than visuals. While a full-blown timeline might include images, rich layouts, and date ranges, ArticleThread keeps things more straightforward. Instead of tracking a full period with a date start and date end, we just use a date start. That's because this component is more about highlighting specific events, milestones, or updates rather than time spans. Visually, it's pretty minimal. Instead of showing a big image or illustration, each item displays a font awesome icon just below the title, almost like a little subtitle or visual cue. And just a heads up, images aren't supported in this component, which helps keep the design clean and content driven. Now let's take a look at what kind of content you can add. Each item includes the basics like a title, a description, and optionally an institution or organization name, kind of like a reference to where the event happened or who it was associated with. And just like we saw earlier in the portfolio component, you can also attach links to each entry. These are displayed right below the description, and they work great for pointing users to external resources, articles, documentation, videos, or really anything you want to associate with that specific event. For instance, in the example we've got here, we added a link to one of the items, and just like that, it shows up nicely below the text. Simple, clean, and functional. All right, let's move on to the second component, Article Contact Options. This one's a bit more dynamic. It's designed to display a list of contact options that are both interactive and clickable, kind of like a little contact hub. Think of it as a neat way to list your LinkedIn, GitHub, email, or any other point of contact you want to highlight. When it's rendered on the page, each option appears with its icon. And when you hover over them, you get that interactive feedback, a subtle visual cue that it's clickable. And once you click it, boom, it takes you wherever it's supposed to, whether that's opening an email client, visiting a social profile, or whatever link you've assigned. Now, let's talk about how this one is actually implemented. So, unlike most of the other components we've looked at so far, Article Contact Options doesn't have its own items array. Instead, it pulls in data from the profile configuration, specifically from the contact options you've already defined in your profile.json. Remember that very first component we worked on, the one that loads the profile? It's the same idea here. The contact details you've already set up earlier are reused by this component. In the settings object, all you need is a simple contact IDs array. This array just lists the IDs of the contact options you want to display. Those IDs correspond directly to the ones you defined earlier in your profile. So if you already have those options set up, it's just a matter of referencing them here and you're good to go. That's honestly the beauty of this system. It's modular and encourages reusability. You don't have to rewrite or redefine your contact info all over the place. Just define it once and reuse it wherever it makes sense. So yeah, that's pretty much it for ArticleThread and Article Contact Options. Two small but mighty components that help you enrich your page with useful content and interactivity without adding too much visual noise. Whether you want to showcase key moments in your journey or make it easy for people to reach out, these two have got your back. All right, so now we're going to add a contact form to the template. And to make that happen, we're going to use this neat little tool called Email.js. It's kind of magical, honestly. It lets you send emails straight from your front end using plain old JavaScript. No backend needed, no servers, no PHP, nothing like that. Just front end code sending real emails. Pretty cool, right? So, first things first, head over to emailjs.com and create a free account. It's super quick and nothing too fancy. Once you're signed up and logged in, we're ready to roll. When you land on the dashboard, take a second to look around. The layout's nice and clean, everything's pretty intuitive. The first thing we'll do is set up an email service. This is what will actually handle sending your emails. Email.js supports a bunch of popular providers, Gmail, Outlook, iCloud, or even a custom SMTP server if that's more your vibe. Personally, I went with Gmail because it's quick and easy. I've already got it connected here, so I'm good to go. But if you're setting it up for the first time, just follow the instructions. They'll guide you through it. Next up, we're going to create our email template. This is the layout for the email that'll arrive in your inbox whenever someone submits the form. Choose the Contact Us template. It's simple and gets the job done. Then click into the design editor. This is where we add a few dynamic variables so the email includes the actual info the user provides. We'll take our time with this part. Start by adding from name, that'll hold the sender's name. Then add from email, their email address. Next is custom subject. That's the subject line. And finally, keep message. That's the body of what they're saying. Just make sure those variable names are exactly right. No typos, no extra spaces. The API depends on those names to match. Once you've added all four, you can totally customize the template, tweak the fonts, adjust the layout, change the colors, whatever feels right for your project. Just make sure everything stays clean and readable. When you're happy with the design, hit apply to lock in your changes. And don't forget to save the template before you move on. Seriously, I've forgotten that way too many times. Now let's jump back into our project. We're going to create a new article called ArticleContactForm. Just like the others, it'll have an ID, a component field set to ArticleContactForm, and a locales object. The locales section is where we define the messages your form will show, things like message sent or thanks for reaching out. You can translate them if your site supports multiple languages. And this component doesn't use an items array, by the way, just a heads up. All right, now for the credentials. In the settings object for this article, we're going to add 3 values: public key, service ID, and template ID. You can find the public key under your account tab on the Email.js dashboard. Go ahead and copy it in. Then grab the service ID. That's the one tied to the email service you connected earlier. Let me just click mine and copy it over. And finally, the template ID, the one for the template we just created with those variables. Click to open the settings and copy that in as well. Once all 3 values are set, everything's connected and ready to go. Now let's test it out. Open the contact form on your site. Type in some sample data. Name, let's say John Doe. Email, johndoe@email.com. Subject, something like hi. And for the message, maybe go with how you doing, bro? Just make sure all the fields are filled in. If anything's missing, the form won't go through. Then click send. Wait a second. And boom, there it is. Your success message shows up. Exactly the one you defined in the locales. Now hop over to the Email.js dashboard. You should see that message in your message history. And if you're using Gmail or whatever service you connected, you'll find it in your inbox too, looking just how you styled it. And that's it. You've got a fully functional contact form, no backend, no hosting headaches, no added complexity, just simple, clean, and perfect for a portfolio site like this. Alrighty, folks, so here we go. Let's talk about getting our website up and running on GitHub Pages. Now, don't worry if this sounds a little scary at first. It's actually pretty chill once you get the hang of it. So I've got this little project going on. It's called Alana Résumé, and I've already created a fresh repo for it right here. Nice and clean, ready to go. The idea now is to push our project into this repository so we can see it working live on the internet, which is always a fun little milestone, right? But wait, before we get ahead of ourselves and just start pushing things, there's one tiny thing we need to do. And trust me, it's important. We're going to pop open the vite.config.js file real quick. Yep, just head there. And we're going to set the base path for the application. Now, what's the base path, you might ask? Great question. The base path is basically like telling your app, hey, this is where you live now. On GitHub Pages, your site isn't hosted at the root like on Netlify or Vercel. Nah, it's tucked away under / your repo name. So in this case, it's going to be / Alana résumé, and we need to let Vite know that. Otherwise, things will break and it'll be confusing and we'll just be sad. Cool. So we've got our base path sorted. Feeling good about that. Now let's go ahead and add our changes. You know the drill. Git add at, git commit m, first commit, all that good stuff. And now we push it upstream. Big moment here. Just watching those lines scroll by in the terminal, it's a beautiful thing. All right, we're live on GitHub, but, and this is the part that always gets you at first, you'll probably notice that the deployment script is already kicking off. GitHub is doing its thing, but it's going to fail. Yep, it's going to fail, and that's okay. Totally normal at this stage. Why? Because we haven't set up the full configuration yet. So let's just hang tight for a second, let it do its second, let it do its thing, wait for it, and yep, there it goes. Failed. Classic. But hey, we're just getting started. All right. So now we've reached the part where we've got to help GitHub Actions do its thing properly, because right now it's kind of trying its best, but we haven't exactly given it the keys to the kingdom yet. So what we need to do is give it the right permissions, specifically read and write permissions, so it can actually deploy our portfolio, not just sit there and think about it. So here's what we're going to do. Nice and easy. Head over to your repo, click on Settings, then scroll down to Actions, and from there, click on General. Now keep scrolling just a bit until you see a section about workflow permissions. It'll probably be set to read access by default, but we want to change that to read and write permissions. Go ahead and check that option, hit save, and boom, we're one step closer to going live. Now back to the main page of your repo. You'll probably still see that little red or yellow cat icon from the failed deployment earlier. That's totally fine. What we're going to do is click on that little error icon and then hit Rerun Jobs. That tells GitHub, hey buddy, try that again, but this time with the right permissions. And now we wait. This is the chill part. The deployment process is running again in the background. So feel free to grab a cup of coffee, stretch a little, maybe take a breath. This is where the magic happens, behind the scenes. Once it's done, give it a minute, you'll see that everything compiles, builds, and deploys just like we wanted. And right after that, GitHub will go ahead and create a brand new branch for us called GH Pages. That's where our live site is going to live. No need to do anything manually there. GitHub's got us covered. All right, we're almost at the finish line now. Just one last little configuration before we can officially say our site is live and shareable with the world. So here's what we're going to do. Head over to the Pages section in your GitHub repo settings. Yep, just scroll down on the left menu until you see Pages. Once you're in there, you'll see an option to choose which branch you want to deploy from. Right now, it's probably blank or set to main, but we want to change that to gh-pages. Why GH Pages, you ask? Well, that's the branch GitHub automatically created during our deployment process. It holds the actual static files that make up our site. By selecting that branch, we're basically telling GitHub, hey, whenever something changes here, update the live website, please and thank you. And GitHub's like, say less. All right, so we save that setting, and now we wait again. Yeah, I know, more waiting, but this part's normal. It might take a minute or two for the site to actually go live. GitHub's just doing its thing behind the scenes, moving files around, setting up servers, probably sipping some coffee of its own. So just hang tight. Don't refresh like a maniac. It's coming. And once that's done, your website will be officially accessible at yourusername.github.io/your repo name. You can copy that link, send it to your friends, tweet it if you want, or just sit there and admire your work. Oh, and because you made the repo public, Nice move, by the way. It's already accessible to anyone. No extra steps, just boom, done. All right, so here we are. Finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's take a look at the final result, shall we? Our little project, all grown up and live on the web. I mean, just look at it. Everything's there, everything's working, and it's looking pretty slick, if I do say so myself. So starting from the top, you'll see that I went ahead and filled out all the sections of the portfolio. No empty placeholders, no coming soon vibes, just a full polished layout. We've got an education section, and for that I use the timeline component. Really helps break things down in a visual way, super clear and clean. Then there's the skills section, and here I played around with the article skills component quite a bit. I used it multiple times actually to group skills into different categories. It's a nice way to keep things organized and easy to read. Feels very intentional. Moving on, we've got the experience section. Yep, timeline again. I'm a fan of that visual consistency, plus it just looks good. Then there's the portfolio, which you probably remember from earlier. It's all there, showcasing the projects with a nice layout, all styled and clickable. After that, there's a publication section where I brought in the Threads article component to highlight some write-ups. Keeps things structured and easy to scan, especially if you've got multiple pieces to showcase. And now, this part's fun. We've got the career section. Here I got a little creative. I actually combined two different article skills components. One of them is used to show certificates in a neat little list format, great for keeping things compact. And the other one has a pie chart that shows what Alana is currently studying. Kind of gives it that personal touch, shows growth, not just achievements. And then wrapping it all up, we've got the contact section. Straightforward, simple, clean, no fuss. So yeah, that's how our portfolio turned out. Fully functional, visually balanced, and live for the world to see. And just so you know, the source code for everything we did is available right there in the description, as well as in the GitHub docs of the original project. If you want to dig in, fork it, or make it your own, you totally can. Anyway, hope you enjoyed hanging out during this tutorial. It's been fun building this with you.